Why do Julius Malema, Fadil Adams, John Hlophe and Siyabonga think they have the moral authority to judge the ethical standing of President Cyril Ramaphosa? In most democracies, these individuals would be nowhere near a parliament. Someone who has been sentenced to 5 years in prison. An individual who was removed as a judge because of unethical actions. I'm all for Ramaphosa being held to account for whatever wrong he did, if he did wrong. But as a public, should we not expect that those sitting in judgment should themselves be beyond reproach? Hello everyone, welcome back to Joe Talks Politics. I am your host, Joseph Musia. Let's get right into this. The parliamentary process for the possible removal of President Cyril Ramaphosa is now in motion. The election of Makashule Gana as the chairperson marks a major milestone in the nearly 4-year-long call for accountability. But here's the question nobody seems to be asking. Who exactly is doing the judging? This week, I want to look beyond the legal process and examine the politics behind it. How did the ANC end up backing an opposition politician to chair one of the most consequential committees in recent parliamentary history? What was Ramaphosa really saying when he publicly endorsed constitutional processes while carefully avoiding any commitment to this specific inquiry? The Constitutional Court has settled the questions of legality. The question now is credibility. Because before this committee passes judgment on the president, South Africans may first pass judgment on the committee itself. And how much confidence should the public have in a process that includes politicians whose own records have attracted serious controversy? Let's begin with the formation of the committee. One of the more interesting developments was the election of Gana as chairperson. The ANC's initial preference appears to have been one of its own MPs. That would have been the most natural outcome. After all, the ANC remains the largest party in parliament and the committee is considering the future of an ANC president. Yet, that did not happen. Instead, after extensive negotiations, the ANC abandoned its preference and supported Gana, a member of Rise Mzansi. This was politically significant. The ANC could have dug in its heels and insisted on an ANC chairperson. It chose not to do so. The obvious reason is that a committee investigating a sitting president requires a degree of public credibility. An ANC chairperson would almost certainly have been viewed with suspicion by opposition parties and the public. By supporting Gana, the ANC appears to have made a strategic calculation. It accepted that a chairperson perceived to be more independent would enhance the legitimacy of the process. It also appears to have been forced into admitting that preserving the legitimacy of the process was more important than controlling the chair. That decision alone tells us something important about the political sensitivity surrounding this inquiry. The second issue concerns President Ramaphosa's own remarks regarding the Section 89 process.
The institutions of our democracy must be allowed to perform their work without interference and without any form of intimidation. I will continue to uphold the principles and safeguard the integrity of my office. I will respect the work and authority of Parliament and abide by the rulings of our courts. I have every confidence in the constitutional processes of our country and will continue to respect and abide by them. We will not allow anything to slow the momentum of growth and transformation that, with each passing day, is gaining more and more pace.
The president says his approach is guided by the supremacy of the Constitution and the rule of law. You will notice that Ramaphosa did not attack Parliament. He did not attack the Constitutional Court. And he did not question the legitimacy of the impeachment process. But there is another side to this. What he did not say may just be as important as what he did say. He did not explicitly welcome the establishment of the committee. He did not commit himself to cooperating with every aspect of its work. He did not even withdraw the possibility of legal action. In my view, the president's comments should be understood as institutionally supportive but procedurally non-committal. He is affirming the legitimacy of the constitutional process while preserving his freedom of action. That is not necessarily contradictory. A president can respect constitutional institutions while simultaneously challenging aspects of a process through lawful means. Ramaphosa used carefully calibrated language designed to demonstrate respect for institutions while avoiding commitments that could limit his options in future. Now, let us come to the one issue that could make people question the credibility of the process. The constitutional legitimacy of this committee is not in dispute. Parliament has the authority to establish it. The Constitutional Court has spoken. The process is lawful. My concern lies elsewhere. It is with the people who have been entrusted with carrying out this responsibility. Among those participating in the process are politicians who themselves carry significant ethical, legal, or reputational baggage. Some, like Julius Malema, have criminal convictions. Others have been subjects of misconduct findings and being removed from being judges, like John Hlophe. I am not arguing that these individuals should be excluded from Parliament, nor am I arguing that they lack the legal authority to participate. Parliament is a political institution, not a court of law. The Constitution does not require MPs to be saints. But there is a distinction between legal authority and moral and ethical authority. Supporters of their parties will correctly point out that a person does not have to be perfect to identify wrongdoing in someone else. That is true. The question, however, is not whether they have the right to sit on the committee. The question is whether their presence enhances or diminishes public confidence in the process. This is where I believe the issue becomes significant. The committee is not merely investigating facts. It is evaluating whether the conduct of a sitting president meets constitutional standards. It is therefore a process that inevitably carries a moral dimension. And when some of the people involved have themselves faced questions about ethics, integrity, and accountability, it becomes legitimate to ask whether they possess the moral authority to sit in judgment of others. The committee must not only conclude, it must reach a conclusion that South Africans are willing to trust. And that trust cannot be created merely through legal procedure. It also depends on public confidence in the people conducting the process. That, in my view, is the central issue. The constitutional legitimacy of the committee is secure. The political credibility of the committee, on the other hand, remains to be tested. And that is why the composition of this committee may prove just as important as the evidence it ultimately considers. What do you think? Maybe you don't agree that the composition of this committee is problematic. Share those views in the comments section below. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. That was another episode of Joe Talks Politics. From me, Joseph Musia. See you in the next one.